Hello, and welcome to This Day in History. It is July 9th, 2024, and as we all know, the year doesn't matter. It's all about the day and what happened on this day in years past. We're in the middle of a sweltering heat wave, and it is it is 1:20 in the afternoon, and it's already over 90 degrees. So I'm not going to goof off too much. I'm going to keep this short, sweet, to the point because I want to get out of the car, into the shade, get me something to eat. I just finished my workout in the gym, so I want to get me something to eat before I have to head off to work. But I'm keeping this short and sweet. So let's get to it, shall we? On this day, July 9th. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. Our very first birthday it's 1856. It's Nikola Tesla. If you don't know who Nikola Tesla is, there's a car named after him. There was a rock band named after him. A lot of your modern marvels that you take for granted today really owe their thanks to his innovation and his influence. He is Serbian American. He's an inventor, he's a researcher. He discovered the rotating magnetic field, which is the basis of most alternating current, that would be AC, machinery. So, when he came to the United States, he had a letter of recommendation from someone in the science community, and he presented it to Thomas Edison, where he actually had interned under Edison. The two would clash. Edison was all about direct current, DC, and Tesla discovered that the alternating current, AC, was way better. And I don't know if it was an ego thing or whatever, but Edison did all he could to debunk the AC thing and to dismiss it out of hand. The two really clashed. They didn't get along very well. One of the things that Nikola Tesla had said about Thomas Edison, who was like a hero to him, he was like a scientific hero. He admired him. It was almost a little bit of hero worship there. And then it got, his image of the man was completely dashed and crushed when he actually went to go work with him. He found that he was a very untidy, unkempt, messy person. I can relate to that. Whereas Nikola Tesla was very, very meticulous and very tidy and just did not like clutter. And that was one of the things that where he and Edison clashed on a lot. But he was born in Smiljan, Croatia, and he was a credit to our society. He was his big things that he wanted to figure out how to send power packets wirelessly, like literally send power from point A to point B that could be 100 miles away, and it's just like a radio transmission. I'm going to send you a packet of energy, and that ideology is what led to this device that I'm using right now, my cell phone. He was ahead of his time by 50, 100 years, if not maybe 1,000 years. That might be a stretch, but he was such an innovator, and I have a lot of mad respect for that guy. So, yeah, almost 4 minutes wasted on one guy. Sorry. So the next 1911 physicist John Archibald Wheeler. He was the first American involved in the theoretical development of the atom bomb. He was the originator of the term black hole. He was born on this day in 1911. Who else was born on this day in 1911 was Mervyn Peake. He was an English novelist, poet, and painter. We also have 1947 would see the birth of O.J. Simpson. Orenthal J. Simpson. He was an African American football player. He was an actor. He was acquitted of the murder of his ex-wife and her friend. There's a lot of speculation that he was acquitted out of fear that if they convicted him, then LA would be rioting in the streets, which they did anyway. Um, in recent years, the Rodney King thing and all that, they didn't want another Rodney King riot on their hands, so there's a conventional theory that he was acquitted just because they didn't want to see the city burn. He ended up going to prison for armed robbery. He was in Vegas, and I guess he was hard up for money, and he felt that he was recovering stolen items. Well, there were memorabilia items that this guy was selling, and then he went to go recover them with two other associates, armed. So it was an armed robbery thing, and he went to prison. He was released years later, and then he recently died here back in April. In 1955, we see the birth of Lindsey Graham, U.S. politician. Lindsey was a congressman and senator. 1956, one of my favorite actors, Tom Hanks. He was born on this day, and if what my grandfather said is true, and I'm related to Abraham Lincoln, which he said we're related to Kennedy as well. Hanks is related to Lincoln through Lincoln's mother. Her maiden name was Hanks, and so she married Lincoln, had their line, and then one of the other siblings had their line, and that line is actor Tom Hanks. So I've always loved Tom Hanks' work. He was brilliant he had a slew of movies in the 90s that were they were runaway hits. Like, Philadelphia was huge. Saving Private Ryan was a little bit later. Castaway was another good one, although I've never actually watched that, but it was a good movie. I've seen snippets of it. He just did a lot of really good stuff, and he was in the old TV series Bosom Buddies. He was a stand-up comedian in the 80s. He had a few good movies, Big, Punchline. Just a lot of good stuff. So his birthday's today. 1964, Courtney Love. She's an American musician, actress. She was the wife of Kurt Cobain, frontman for Nirvana. That's really where she got her claim to fame from. I think she kind of utilized his notoriety to catapult her career. I don't think she's all that great, but that's just me. 1975 sees the birth of Jack White. He's an American musician. You would know him from the band White Stripes if you're into that music. I've heard the band, but I've never listened to them. So that's the birthdays. So we go back to 1540. It's on this day in 1540 that the marriage of King Henry VIII and his fourth wife, Anne of Cleves, is annulled. We fast forward to 1755. General Edward Braddock's British army defeated at the Battle of... Here's where I'm going to screw this up. I apologize. Monongahela. And this is during the French and Indian Wars. So what's significant about this is like here recently we've touched on a lot of Revolutionary War stuff, right? And when you look at the root cause of the Revolutionary War, well, one of the root causes is this war right here, the French and Indian Wars. The biggest reason why the British Crown imposed taxation on the colonies was to pay for the war debt of this French and Indian War. And a lot of that's a misconcept on the colonists at the time. And history has been so faded that most Americans don't even realize that was the reason for the taxation. So it was a very justifiable reasoning for the taxation. Could they have allowed the colonies to come to the table? Sure, but they didn't, because that wasn't protocol of the time. That wasn't, it was unheard of for a subject to demand to have a seat at the table, because that just didn't happen. Subjects didn't demand an audience with the king. They requested it, and would get it if the king was so inclined. But and that's kind of essentially what it, the analogy really is like. So the American colonies wanted to have representation in Parliament to discuss taxation, and they were denied that. It's akin to a peasant, going up to the castle and demanding to speak to the king. I mean, you just don't do that. You don't occupy your king's time unless you're someone of significance or importance. So we fast forward to 1816. The Congress of Tucumán declares Argentina's independence from Spain. 1828. If I said 1916, I meant 1816 on that declaration there. 1828 sees American painter Gilbert Stuart die at the age of 72. 1850, our 12th U.S. President Zachary Taylor dies, only 16 months after having taken office. We fast forward 105 years. It's 1955. Rock and roll is, well, not the rock and roll that I'm used to, but rock and roll is making its impact on American society. The song "Rock Around the Clock" by Bill Haley in the Comets, it becomes the first rock and roll single to hit number one on the Billboard charts, and so that was huge. 5 years later, we have a little bit of a U.S. Navy tragedy. The USS Thresher, actually not 5 years later, excuse me. 5 years later, in 1960, the USS Thresher, which was the first of its class of nuclear-powered submarine, is launched. It goes on its maiden voyage. The tragedy is that 3 years later, 1963, that it sank, and in what would be the worst submarine accident in history. 1995, the Grateful Dead performs its very last concert at Soldier Field in Chicago. Jerry Garcia, who was their frontman and guitar player, he would pass away a month later. In 2001, we see a British TV series called The Office debut. It was created and written by Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. Its popularity and success had spawned an American version of the same show, with the same title. I never watched it because it looked dumb. Sorry, I just, Steve Carell kind of grew on me over the years, like, as a comedian. Like, I really didn't care for, the show, and I didn't care for Steve Carell in that show, but in other stuff that Steve Carell has done, I've enjoyed. So, he's not, it's not that he's not funny, because he is. It's just, I just really didn't care for the chemistry of that show. Same with Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight Schrute, I think is the character's name. I know, complete moron. I can't stand the character. It's just an idiot. But I've seen that guy in other stuff. And Rainn Wilson that dude is phenomenal. I really like his work. I dig his work. He did a TV series that was actually filmed in Portland, called Backstrom, I believe it was. It only went one season, unfortunately, and it was just so good. I don't understand why it didn't go further, and that's unfortunate. But moving right along. Oh, yeah. But because of the success of The Office, Ricky Gervais became a star. And that dude is funny. I love when he roasts people. He's just... He's funny because of his sarcasm. And while normally I don't particularly care for sarcasm as a form of humor, the way he does it it's funny. So in 2002, fearing that there wouldn't be enough eligible players to continue, and I think what they meant to say is to continue the game, right? So the MLB commissioner, Bud Selig, he stopped the annual All-Star game in the 11th inning because it was going on. Guys are getting tired out. They're getting worn out. It's 11th inning and it's still tied at 7-all. So he just stopped the game and I guess declared it a tie. In 2011, South Sudan declares its independence from the country of Sudan. after passing a referendum to secede. So they they have this referendum, and they pass this referendum to secede from South Sudan. Is saying we are seceding from the whole nation of Sudan, and as a result, they declare their independence. 2019, American businessman and politician Ross Perot would pass away at the age of 89. That was Ross the Boss. He ran for president in. It can't be right. He seemed like he was in his 80s back then. He ran for president in 92. So 89. Wow. I'll have to fact check that because maybe I got the year wrong. I'm not sure. At any rate, so we have one final thing. It's the featured event of this day in history. It's 1762. Catherine the Great assumes power. She had overthrown Peter III, and she began her reign as Empress of Russia. But in her reign, she led the country into full participation in not only the cultural lifestyle of Europe, but the political aspect of Europe as well. And she extended the Russian territory under her reign. So that's good for them, I guess. But that concludes this day in history. So I'm going to scoot on down the road. I'm going to get me something to eat. I have just under an hour to get to work. So, yeah. With that said, have a good day. Take care. Be blessed. Do take care of yourselves in this sweltering heat. This heat wave is no joke. Stay hydrated. Stay cool. If you're going to go to a river or a lake or whatever to cool off, my advice: leave the booze at home, because the booze is going to be it's the fastest way to dehydrate yourself in an already sweltering condition. So be safe about it. All right. With that said, be blessed. Take care, and we'll do this again tomorrow for July 10th. All right. Take care. Bye.